I couldn't believe my luck when I signed up for the hiking tour through the Smoky Mountains. The guide seemed knowledgeable, the weather was perfect, and the promise of an adventure in one of America's most beautiful landscapes had me thrilled. We started off with high spirits, the group chatting and laughing as we made our way deeper into the wilderness. But that night, everything changed. I woke up in the middle of the night to an eerie silence. The campfire had burned out, and the tents of my fellow hikers were empty. I called out for the guides, but there was no response. Panic set in as I realized I was alone in the dark forest, with no idea how to get back. I spent the next few hours frantically searching for any signs of the guides or other hikers, but it was as if they had vanished into thin air. My mind raced with questions. Had they been attacked by wild animals? Had they simply abandoned me? As dawn broke, I decided to start walking, hoping to find a trail or some clue as to where they might have gone. The forest, which had seemed so welcoming the day before, now felt oppressive and hostile. Every snap of a twig, every rustle of leaves, sent shivers down my spine. By mid-afternoon, exhausted and hungry, I stumbled upon a small clearing. There, I found a makeshift altar, adorned with feathers, bones, and other odd trinkets. A chill ran down my spine as I realized this wasn't just a random spot in the forest, this was a place of significance to someone or something. As I stood there, staring at the altar, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up, and I spun around, but saw nothing. My mind raced with wild theories. What had I stumbled upon? I decided to leave the clearing quickly and continue searching for a way out. As I walked, I couldn't help but notice more signs that something was off. Strange symbols carved into trees, odd formations of rocks, and the feeling of being followed persisted. Nightfall came again, and I found myself even more lost than before. Desperate, I set up a small camp and tried to sleep, but my mind wouldn't let me rest. That's when I heard it, a whispering, barely audible but unmistakable. It sounded like voices, but they spoke in a language I couldn't understand. The whispers grew louder, and fear gripped me. I felt paralyzed, unable to move or make a sound. Suddenly, the whispers stopped, replaced by a heavy silence. I forced myself to stand up, my eyes darting around the dark forest, searching for the source of the voices. I decided to keep moving, even though it was night. The thought of staying in one place with those whispers haunting me was unbearable. As I walked, I stumbled upon an old, weathered journal lying on the ground. I picked it up and started reading by the light of my flashlight. The journal belonged to a previous hiker, who had also been abandoned by his guides. He described a ritual where hikers were left as offerings to appease the spirits that roamed the Smoky Mountains. The guides believed that by doing so, they could ensure safe passage for themselves and future groups. The realization hit me like a ton of bricks. I was the latest offering, left here to satisfy some ancient, malevolent spirits. I felt a mix of anger and fear, anger at the guides who had betrayed me, and fear of the unknown forces lurking in the forest. Determined not to become another victim, I made up my mind to find a way out. The journal mentioned that the spirits were most active around the makeshift altars, and avoiding those areas could increase my chances of survival. I walked through the night, using the journal's hints and my instincts to navigate the forest. I heard the whispers again, but this time, I forced myself to stay calm and ignore them. My determination to escape grew stronger with each step. As dawn approached, I saw a break in the trees up ahead. With renewed hope, I quickened my pace, praying that it was a way out of this nightmare. The break in the trees led me to a narrow path that seemed well-trodden. My heart pounded with hope and fear as I followed it, every fiber of my being focused on finding safety. The path wound through the forest, and as the sun rose higher, the oppressive atmosphere began to lift slightly. After what felt like hours, I heard the distant sound of running water. I followed the sound, and soon, I came upon a river. Relief washed over me as I knelt to drink and collect my thoughts. The journal had mentioned that following rivers could lead to civilization. With renewed energy, I began to follow the river downstream. I kept my eyes and ears open, wary of any signs of the spirits or the guides who had left me behind. As the day wore on, the forest started to thin out, and I began to see signs of human presence, footprints, discarded wrappers, and even the distant hum of traffic. As the sounds of civilization grew closer, I felt a mixture of relief and lingering dread. The forest, which had seemed so infinite and mysterious, was finally giving way to the familiar signs of human activity. I eventually stumbled upon a small, rural road. Exhausted and disheveled, I flagged down the first car that came by. The driver, a kind-hearted local, listened to my story with wide eyes. He told me that rumors of hikers disappearing had circulated for years, but no one had ever confirmed the guide's sinister practices. He drove me to the nearest town, where I reported my experience to the authorities. Despite my physical escape, I couldn't shake the feeling of unease. The mystery of the Smoky Mountains and the spirits said to dwell there haunted my thoughts. Why did the guides believe in such rituals? Were the spirits real, or was it all a ploy to maintain control over their domain? As I returned to my everyday life, these questions lingered, gnawing at the edges of my mind. I had survived the ordeal, but I felt changed, burdened with the knowledge of the dark secrets hidden within the forest. The Smoky Mountains had let me go, but they had left me with more questions than answers.